She was just trying to survive, a black single mother working in silence, fixing what the world had already given up on. No power, no money, no second chances. Then one morning, a billionaire's luxury car stopped in front of her worn-down garage, and with it came a disabled daughter the system had failed for years. What happened next wasn't supposed to be possible, not according to doctors, not according to money, and definitely not according to a society that never expected her to be the answer. But one quiet decision would shatter reputations, expose buried prejudice, and change lives forever. The question is, who really deserves a miracle? Comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And subscribe for more powerful stories that demand to be heard. Amara Thompson's life had never been loud, admired, or protected. It unfolded quietly in a working-class corner of San Diego, inside a cramped, aging garage wedged between warehouses and rusted fences. While others passed by without noticing, Amara spent her days repairing what others discarded: machines, broken parts, worn systems, because she knew what it meant to be overlooked. A black single mother raising her young daughter alone, she worked long hours with grease-stained hands and a tired back, not chasing dreams anymore, only stability. Survival had replaced ambition years ago. Her routine was predictable. Early mornings, late nights, and the constant pressure of knowing that one mistake could cost everything. Customers trusted her work but rarely trusted her presence. Some hesitated when they saw her. Others questioned her skill before questioning the engine. Amara had learned not to react. Silence had become armor. She focused on precision, believing that excellence was the only answer a world like this respected. What few people knew was that Amara carried grief that never fully healed. Loss had shaped her into someone who studied systems deeply, how things moved, failed, and compensated under pressure. She read manuals late at night, not out of hope but habit. Knowledge, she believed, was the one thing that couldn't be taken from her. Across the city, in a world far removed from oil-stained concrete and second-hand tools, James Harrison lived surrounded by glass walls, ocean views, and influence. A billionaire whose name commanded respect in boardrooms and headlines, James had spent years pouring money into innovation, technology, and solutions meant to fix the impossible. Yet none of it had fixed the one thing that mattered most to him: his daughter, Olivia. Confined to a wheelchair since childhood, she had endured procedures, devices, and promises that always fell short. On a warm morning that seemed no different from any other, these two lives, separated by race, power, and privilege, moved unknowingly toward the same point. A mechanical failure would force a decision neither of them expected. And in a place no one believed mattered, a confrontation between prejudice, desperation, and quiet brilliance was about to begin. The luxury vehicle didn't belong on Amara Thompson's street. Its polished surface reflected cracked pavement, faded signs, and the quiet stares of people who knew wealth only from a distance. When the engine failed and the car rolled to a stop outside her garage, it felt like an intrusion from another world. Amara noticed it immediately, not with curiosity but instinct. Expensive machines demanded attention, and attention often came with consequences she had learned to anticipate. James Harrison stepped out with the confidence of a man used to control. The tailored suit, the posture, the subtle impatience in his movements all signaled authority. Behind him, Olivia sat carefully, her mobility device rigid and unforgiving, her body tense from years of enduring systems that promised relief but delivered pain. The contrast was impossible to ignore: power standing beside vulnerability, wealth beside limitation. And across from them, a black woman in work clothes, already fighting the assumptions forming in their minds. From the start, skepticism lingered in the air. Amara felt it without a word being spoken. The hesitation, the quiet calculation, she had seen it countless times before. Doubt arrived faster when competence wore her face. She focused on the engine, letting precision speak where her presence was being silently questioned. But while her hands worked, her attention kept drifting. Olivia's posture was wrong. The strain on her body was unmistakable. Years of mechanical intuition sharpened by personal loss made it impossible to ignore. When Amara examined the device supporting Olivia, what she saw unsettled her. The structure was advanced, expensive, and impressive on the surface, but fundamentally flawed. It forced unnatural movement, redistributing pressure in ways that punished the body rather than supported it. To Amara, it was clear. The system valued technology over humanity, design over lived experience, a mistake made by people who had never felt what it was like to move in pain. Her observation was not welcomed. James bristled at the implication. The device had been engineered by the best minds money could buy. Specialists, institutions, certifications. The idea that a woman in an old garage could see what they had missed felt insulting, even threatening. Suspicion deepened. Boundaries tightened. And underneath it all sat an unspoken truth. Trust did not come easily when the solution did not look the way power expected it to. Against instinct, James allowed Amara to try. Not out of belief, but desperation. Years of disappointment had eroded certainty. Hope, even misplaced, felt better than nothing. Amara worked through the night, driven not by confidence but responsibility. Each adjustment carried weight. One error could confirm every doubt already aimed at her. One failure could become proof that she never belonged in that space. The first attempt ended badly. Pain returned with force. Blood replaced hope. In seconds, belief collapsed into fear. The room filled with blame, shock, and regret. The moment felt familiar to Amara, the speed at which trust turned into accusation. She stood frozen, watching years of effort threaten to dissolve into a single mistake. To them, it was evidence. To her, it was a reminder of how little margin she had ever been given. James withdrew. Lawyers loomed. Consequences sharpened. Yet something unexpected happened. Olivia, the one person who had every reason to walk away, did not. Her faith remained steady, quiet, and unexplainable. She had recognized something different, not perfection, but sincerity. Not certainty, but care. Amara returned to the garage alone, doubt pressed in from every direction. Neighbors whispered, sleep disappeared, savings vanished. She rebuilt the design from the ground up, questioning assumptions others never had. She studied balance not from textbooks, but from watching bodies compensate for pain. She tested failure after failure, absorbing each one silently. The pressure intensified. Legal threats surfaced. Professional authorities dismissed her. Her work was called dangerous, illegal, reckless. Once again, the system closed ranks, but with each rejection, Amara grew clearer. The problem had never been her skill. It had been who the world expected solutions to come from. And as the final design took shape, the tension reached a breaking point. One last attempt remained. One moment where belief, prejudice, and fear would collide. What happened next would decide whether Amara Thompson would be erased or finally seen. The final attempt unfolded under a weight no one in the garage could escape. Every movement felt suspended in time, as if the room itself understood what was at stake. Amara Thompson stood still for a moment, grounding herself, aware that this was no longer just about engineering or correction. It was about trust in a world that had rarely offered her any. Around her, scrutiny tightened. Professional eyes watched closely, not with hope but expectation of failure. The kind reserved for people who step outside the roles society assigns them. James Harrison stood rigid, his authority no longer shielding him from fear. For the first time, his wealth offered no leverage. Years of influence, donations, and elite access had all led to this fragile moment. Balanced on the work of a black woman the system had already decided did not belong here. His daughter's future rested on something money had failed to buy. Amara adjusted the final mechanism with deliberate care. The design was different now, not refined for appearance, not optimized for prestige, but built around balance, movement, and dignity. Every calculation reflected lived reality, not theory. This time, the system adapted to the body, not the other way around. Silence stretched thin as Olivia shifted her weight forward. The first moment passed without pain. Then another. The tension in the room became unbearable. Observers leaned in, disbelief replacing skepticism. The structure responded naturally, absorbing pressure, redistributing force. The impossible began to happen, not suddenly but steadily. Years of limitation unraveled step by step. What followed shattered every assumption in that space. Olivia moved without collapsing, without recoil, without fear. The device no longer controlled her body, it followed it. Tears streamed down faces that had prepared themselves for disappointment. James broke under the realization that everything he had relied on had failed, while everything he had overlooked had succeeded. But the miracle did not arrive without consequence. As relief surged, resistance followed close behind. Legal warnings resurfaced. Accusations sharpened. The same institutions that had dismissed Amara now positioned themselves as guardians of safety, authority, and order. The narrative shifted quickly. What had just been witnessed was reframed as dangerous, unauthorized, and unacceptable. Cameras appeared, pressure mounted. The system moved swiftly to reclaim control. Amara stood unmoving as attention turned toward her. Praise curdled into threat. The miracle became evidence, not of success, but of defiance. In that moment, the injustice revealed itself fully. The world could celebrate the outcome, but it could not tolerate the source. Not when it disrupted hierarchy. Not when it challenged who was allowed to be right. As officials closed in and consequences loomed, Amara understood the truth with painful clarity. Changing a life was never the hardest part. Changing a system was, and now, with everything exposed, the question remained unresolved. Would the world protect the miracle or punish the woman who made it possible? What followed was not applause or celebration, it was reckoning. The miracle had already happened, and it could not be undone. Olivia's life had changed permanently. Pain no longer defined her movement. Fear no longer dictated her future. But the world around Amara Thompson struggled to accept what it had witnessed. The same systems that had ignored failure for years now rushed to control success they did not create. James Harrison stood publicly where it mattered, not as a billionaire shielding his reputation, but as a father who had run out of patience with silence. He used his voice, his platform, and his credibility to speak one truth clearly. The problem had never been a lack of resources, it had been a lack of listening. For the first time, institutions were forced to respond not with dismissal but accountability. Experts reviewed the work. Independent oversight confirmed what had already been proven in practice. Amara's design was not reckless, it was revolutionary. Slowly, resistance weakened. What began as threats shifted into reluctant recognition. Supervision replaced punishment. Opportunity replaced erasure. Not because the system suddenly became fair, but because the truth had become too visible to bury. Amara did not seek recognition. She returned to her work the same way she always had, focused, quiet, deliberate. But something had changed. Doors that once remained closed now opened cautiously. People who once doubted now asked questions. And families who had lost hope began to find it again. One life changed had sparked many more. This story was never just about innovation or generosity. It was about who society allows to be capable, who it trusts, who it believes. Racism does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it appears as doubt, as exclusion, as the refusal to see brilliance when it does not come wrapped in familiarity. Amara Thompson did not just fix a system, she exposed one. And in doing so, she reminded us of something uncomfortable and necessary. Miracles do not belong to the powerful. They belong to those who refuse to stop caring when the world tells them to know their place. The question now is simple. How many more lives must be changed before we change who we listen to? If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Black Community Struggles for more powerful stories about justice, truth, and our community's fight to be seen. And don't forget to hit the like button. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most.